Around the world, more people have taken an interest in American beer, specifically the so-called craft beers or microbrews. These beers tend to be brewed in smaller batches. They may use unusual or local ingredients. Craft beers appeal to an adventurous demographic that's not afraid to spend a little extra on a pint or a bottle of beer to taste something different. That's what Greg Glazer says. He's editor-in-chief of Yankee Brew News.
American craft beer drinkers are experimenting with flavors in beer that they've never been able to get before. A lot of hops for bitterness and aroma, and a lot of malt. And they're willing to spend more money for that. They can certainly buy mass-produced beer, Budweiser in a 12-pack, for almost less money than a 6-pack of a craft beer, but they're buying the craft beer.
A bigger flavor profile has been especially appealing to consumers in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. International sales of American craft beer jumped by almost a third last year. Domestic sales of craft beer, by contrast, rose 11%, while overall beer sales fell 1%. Craft brewers in the U.S. have been busy supplying worldwide demand with products that keep pushing the boundaries of what people think of American beer. In the case of Schmaltz Brewing Company, it teamed up with the New York Public Library to go back in history to the time of America's first president, George Washington, when flavorful beers were the norm. Jennifer Dickey co-brewed what Schmaltz is calling Fortitude's founding father brew.
Yeah, well, I get a lot of roasty, brown chocolate malt up front, a little bit of sweetness. Then you get the really intense hop profile. It is a little hoppier than a lot of other porters. I'm tasting a lot of bitterness in the center, and then on the finish, I'm getting the tanginess of the molasses.
Yes, molasses, that staple of colonial American life and part of George Washington's original recipe, written in his own hand. Again, beer expert Greg Glazer.
In the early days of the United States, both colonial and post-colonial times, everyone was brewing. This included the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. For about 30 years now in the United States, we've had a craft beer revolution, and we have Samuel Adams Boston Lager. Samuel Adams being a patriot in Boston during the Revolution. And that's brewed by the Boston Beer Company and Jim Koch.
Koch started his business in the 1980s, selling his home-brewed recipe to pubs and restaurants from his car. Today, Boston Beer brews more than 2 million barrels a year, and it has more than 31 kinds of beer, including Utopias. Available every 2 years in limited quantities, this beer has a deep ruby color. It was actually aged in sherry, port, Madeira, and bourbon barrels, and it also tastes nothing like beer. So says Grant Wood, a brewer with the Boston Beer Company.
It's like an explosion, really, that's very intense. This big peak of flavor that comes out with the warmth of the alcohol that's in there, malt, caramel, toffee, figs, raisins, dark fruit, that sort of thing. And then it has a very long tapering finish.
They say it's the world's strongest brewed beer with a 27% alcohol content, more than 6 times stronger than a standard beer. It's a rare brew and priced accordingly, $150 a bottle. Again, brewer Grant Wood.
Jim Koch, he's always pushing the brewers to come up with something different, something interesting, something unique, and push the envelope on what beer can be.
And that aggressive innovation has proven to be a successful strategy. It's helped many American craft brewers propel industry sales worldwide. I'm Paul Lynn for VOA News.